Hey, I am Charlotte. Welcome to the Bad Belly. It's another late night edition. Today is my 2-year anniversary. So, what does that mean? I don't mean wedding, obviously. It was 2 years ago today that I came home from the hospital. And I've decided that I need to do a post today, otherwise I would be letting myself down somehow. So, here I am, even though everything I had planned to say has flown out of my head, but obviously today's been a bad day for triggers all round, and I mean, it could have been 40 degrees outside and, you know, not fall like at all, and today still would have reminded me of that day 2 years ago. So what happened that day 2 years ago? Maybe that's, if I don't know what to do, I'll just talk about that. So, I had been very sick over the Halloween, and I had been put back into a close observation unit. A couple of the doctors here in town didn't think that they could handle the way things were going and wanted to transport me back to the city. I wasn't really aware of what was going on because I was coming into my last major infection. I had to have another drain put in. I came home with that drain still in. But we fought, and I didn't have to go back to the city, and that was on Halloween Day. I was still in close observation, and I came home on the 7th of November. So we turned things around pretty quickly that time, I think, because we knew what we had to do with regard to reintroducing food to help me get my strength back up, because my leaving the hospital, aside from a lot of health milestones, I had a lot of caloric milestones that I had to hit too. Up until the morning that I left, I was still on the TPN. It's horrible stuff. I don't drink it like it goes in through an IV, so, but it has a smell still, and every time they had to change the bags, and it's just this thick white concoction, and it's, yeah, super fun. So I really had to get my calories up, and I guess we really haven't talked about what it was like for me to be in hospital, so this is probably coming at everybody from left field. But we're just going to roll on it. I had been on complete bowel rest from the end of June until the very end of August. Like the last week of August, we started reintroducing things like broth. It didn't go very well, but that's as evidenced by the fact that I was just scratching out from under view, which is something I do to deal with anxiety. We'll go into the total bowel rest and what it was like to not be allowed to eat or drink anything for that long. Yeah, see, we're not going to do that today. So I was on TPN, and I really wanted to go home, even though I had just recently been so sick that they were threatening to send me back to the city. On the Friday, the 4th, my lead doctor had said that she was pretty sure that I was going to get to go home on Monday. That obviously it depended on how things went over the weekend, if I was able to keep all of my food down. It was a really hard weekend for us, for a lot of reasons. There were the obvious reasons related to it being my last weekend in hospital, and the impatience and the pressures of that. Additionally, and tragically, we also lost a very dear friend. to a drunk driver that weekend. Sorry, folks, that one dances a little close to the not telling stories that aren't mine line that I've drawn in the sand. Yeah. So we made it through the weekend. It was not an easy weekend. And then Monday morning rolled around. So at this point, physically, I have a PICC line in, which are the permanent, semi-permanent IVs that go in the arm and up into your chest. I have one of those in, and yeah, that PICC line saved my life lots. So hated it, but it was a damn good thing to have. So I still had my PICC line. I had a drain, an abdominal drain, so a tube. You can't see that, but it doesn't matter. I had a tube in under my ribs and running out to just a collection bag. I was on TPN at that point, so the nutrition, the feeding, insulin, because I was a full-blown diabetic, in large part because of the TPN. I was on a wide variety of medication, etc. And then I was physically still unable to sit. So even to sit up in a chair supported like this was a no-go. A slightly elevated bed was about it. And after, I could only do that for so long before I'd have to put the bed back down flat. I was able, by using the hospital bed, I could get myself up and then use the rails to pull myself out of the bed. At night I had a commode chair right beside the bed because it was just too hard for the nurses to come and help me get all the way to the bathroom because I was at by the window and there was another lady in beside me, so I would have to go around the end of my bed past her bed, and it is not far. I mean, I'm really bad at guesstimating distances, but we're talking like, including down my side of the bed, it's less than 20 feet for sure. But it was very hard. The physical act of sitting on a toilet was very difficult as well, especially lowering my leg, using my legs to try and lower myself physically onto the seat of a toilet was very painful. And it took a long time for me to build up to being able to do it. But I could sit on a toilet when I left, and I could get to and from the bathroom by myself. We had spent a lot of time and focus helping me learn to do stairs. I have a raised bungalow, so to get in to the main level of my house, once I walk through that front door, there are 5 steps that I have to go up. And my physio team knew that, and that was one of my barriers to coming home. So we worked one step at a time. I had just started using parallel bars, which was a really big development for me. And the challenge at home, of course, was going to be that I only had one railing. So we had to work on that a lot too. And I was just building up stamina generally. I could sit in a chair, for at least 10 minutes at that point. I could sit up in bed for a little bit longer. My cognitive function was back. I knew who I was, I knew where I was, I knew what day it was, and where I was in time. More than anything, I just wanted to go home. I was so tired, and I just wanted out. I just wanted out. It's, those first few minutes, I walked because, and I'm still not sure how I did it, but I walked out of the hospital which was probably 4 times the longest distance I had walked up until that point, at least continuously. And I just remember walking out of the sliding hospital doors and feeling the air on my face and the sun on my face. And I can remember every single time that I was brought out into the light, whether it was because I was being transferred to another hospital for a procedure or when I was transferred from the city back home. I remember that sensation exactly. And there's a massive difference between fresh air and recirculated air. And if you have never gone an extended period of time without smelling fresh air, it's really hard. You know, air is air, and it's really not. I remember every minute of driving home. I remember what the trees looked like. I remember turning onto our street. I remember being really tired because sitting in the car was hard, and it's like a 6-minute drive if you hit all the lights. I remember everything. I remember how long they made us sit there. I wanted, you know, by 6 o'clock in the morning, I was like, let's go. And I'm pretty sure I ended up being served lunch. So it was a long morning, and I'm stalling. And I'm desperately searching my brain for other details from that morning, like the little panini type sandwich that Sean got for me from the kiosk out in the hospital, and the smoothie, the fruit smoothie from Tim Hortons. And I'm avoiding it because leaving the hospital was great, and getting to come home was great. And I never want to seem ungrateful for that. But we pulled into the driveway, and Sean came around and helped me get out of the car, and I had a walker. And we got to the front of the house, and I was exhausted. And we opened the door and came in. And the baby gate was closed at the top of the stairs. And one by one, my big boys, who were almost 3.5 and 20 months, came up and looked at me and ran away. And I had known that that was a possibility because I looked pretty scary. I mean, when I came home that day, I was so much sicker than I was the day I left. I was just so much better than I had been when I was in hospital that I was able to come home, but I was not well. And I was not well for a long time. So I left a hyper-controlled environment where I was in control of nothing. And I came home and 2 out of 3 of my boys essentially didn't know who I was. My youngest definitely didn't know who I was. And It was hard. Because here was my baby who didn't know what it was like to be held by me, and who didn't know what I smelled like. And I don't know if he could remember what my voice sounded like anymore, because I'd only seen him a handful of times. After he left hospital, after 42 days, I only saw him 3 times. So I was a stranger. And my middle beastie, 5 months is a long time when it's a quarter of your life. You know, and it was, what, a sixth of my oldest life and 99.9% of my little guy. So I came home very ill. Screwed up for sure. Like, psychologically, I was not in a great space. Like, I was better now that I was home, but I had been depressed for so long. And now I was just dealing with the realities of all of the things that I had been so afraid of, right? So I'm laying in a hospital bed, horrified, desperately sad, because I know that my babies are forgetting who I am. And that's its own very special brand of anguish. But then to come home and to have to face those children when you look like a half-dead monster and you can't sit up in a chair for more than 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and there are tubes coming out of your body, and those little arms and legs have to be so careful not to get caught in the tubes. And I was so weak, I couldn't even hold the baby for an entire feeding. I had to build up to that. It was too hard. Somebody would have to come and take him because I couldn't physically hold him in my arms. So I got to come home, and being home is so much better than being at the hospital. And being home had its own challenges and had its own obstacles and challenges that I had to really work hard to overcome. It was a great day. It was a great day. But it was a hard day. But it's getting easier. It's so much easier. My boys all know who I am. You just can't look back. You just have to, there's only forward. I can't fix it. I can't undo it. So I just have to keep going. And I'm hoping that you will keep going with me. Yeah, 2 years. It feels like forever ago, and it feels like last week. All at the same time. But that's just because it's intense, and it'll get easier and easier with every one of these little anniversaries. And this one's just more intense because there's so much other stuff going on, right? So I'm sure next year will be probably not a walk in the park, but I know it'll be easier because I already know how much easier today is than it was a year ago today. So yeah, I've got that to look forward to. It's just going to keep getting better. Anyway, thank you so much. Have a great night. Ciao, ciao.